All right, so let's wrap this up on a positive note. Just just for some balance here, because I know I've been acting like the league and shitting on these running backs. I love them; they're all great players. When Austin Eckler first announced that he wanted to seek a trade, I was like, bro, it's a cold world out there. Ain't nobody checking for Austin Eckler on the trade market, and sure enough, they weren't, because as he pointed out, the Chargers weren't just going to give him away. He wanted a new contract. That was probably the first example this offseason that this is going to be a very difficult one for running backs. But what are the solutions to this, Charles McDonald, if any? Like, what can these running backs do other than tweet through it? Like, some have thrown out the idea of a running back sub-union. I don't know what that would look like. I mean, like,
build a time machine. Build a time machine and go back and switch positions.
I guess. what can they do? I mean, do younger running backs, do they actually hold out earlier, Charles McDonald, before they get to this point? Do they beat the teams to it? Like, how can the running backs take the power back? Shout out to Rage Against the Machine.
I don't really know if like holding out before you get to this point is necessary a solution either, because you just start getting fined, right? Because I would assume at that point you're under contract. So every day you don't show up, it's a pretty serious fine. Like a fine serious enough to the point. I don't remember the exact number, but like Deshaun Watson was still showing up with the Texans, even though we knew that was over, because he didn't want to take on whatever daily fine he had in that training camp. But I don't think there's actually a solution with the way things are set up. I don't think it's possible. But if we're going to stretch the imagination and actually give our guys some relief here, there's two ways you could do it. One that people would never, ever go for: abolish the draft entirely as a whole concept. Let these guys hit the bidding wars the second they finish their college careers. And I think that you would see a lot of contracts go up, because just imagine if a 20-year-old Bijan Robinson could just walk into NFL free agency right now, what kind of contract would he get? That doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen, but maybe there's a way down the road where future generations of running backs can benefit from like shorter rookie contracts on the CBA. So like instead of a 4+1 deal, maybe we're looking at a 2+1 deal. You can hit free agency for, by the time you're 23 or 24 instead of 26 or 27, like in Saquon Barkley's case. But again, like it wouldn't just have to be running backs. It would have to be everybody. So,
the problem is the tag. It's really the tag.
Right.
The tag is the bane of everybody's existence. Yeah.
Right. The tag is a big problem. And also just the nature of the position. Like I said before, there's certain guys, and I think another part of this conversation that needs to be, acknowledged is a lot of this is for guys at the top, guys like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, guys who were tweeting about this yesterday. Some of those guys, they're playing in like their NFL ready bodies at like 19 years old. It's not most guys, but there's a couple of guys that are really like that. So, you're playing in a body that's capable to take on that punishment, but you're playing for free in college and you're drafted and you're on a cost control contract because the salaries got nuked in the 2011 CBA. And then if you're a first round pick, you can get the option and then you can get franchise tag. It's tough to even get to a bidding war. So maybe, and by the time you get to a bidding war, no one wants you. So maybe shorter contracts, if that's a thing that the players could, galvanize around. But other than that, I don't really see how you fix this with how things are currently set up.
Other than the DeLorean, Charles, any ideas?
I don't know. Hope that there's a renaissance. I mean, hope that, sometimes I think about like, Ohio State and Michigan, right? And how did Michigan get to the point now where they're going to be national title contenders in 2023? They became a running team, right? They were like, hey, we're going to be a power running team. We're going to be dominant. We're going to have two running backs capable of rushing for 100 yards in a game. We're going to push to try and be a 200, 300 yard rushing team every time out. And the NFL it's a cyclical league. However, it seems to cycle in decades, not in years. So, I mean, do we get to a point where, people start to think, well, all right, we're now a finesse, we're a passing league. That has resulted in defenses being lighter, quicker. Well, how are light, quick defenses vulnerable? They're vulnerable when you have power running games. You have offensive lines that could, beat them up and tear them apart. And you get into the fourth quarter and they're all on their heels. They're all winded, and, but the problem with the NFL is it reacts to its feeder system. The NFL changes based on the talent that is basically procured beneath it. And, you'd have to basically have really a renaissance in college where it's just like all these powerful, college programs become running programs rather than passing programs. I don't know. I personally don't think there needs to be a solution. I think that's bullshit. I think the NFL is liquid. It goes where it's supposed to go. Yeah. It shapes how it's supposed to shape. People are going to complain about it, whatever. Like, that's fine. But the NFL will do what it's going to do. It's going to be what it has to be. And we'll, 20 years from now, we could all be going like, oh my God, it's so boring. It's just a bunch of running backs now and scoring's down. And, we're once again talking about, how do we get more excitement back into the game? It'll cycle out of this at some point. It might take longer than maybe it normally does, but this is how the league works. Remember, there was a time where, it was all running backs, right? And like Johnny Unitas was like, oh my God, this guy's throwing the football. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it was literally nothing but
watch. There was this NFL Films video I used to watch with my uncle all the time. It was just about the great running backs in NFL history. It was the glamour position. To say it's falling on hard times is certainly an understatement. Charles, I'm with you, man. Wait. Maybe Saquon Barkley at the best. Go ahead.
Before we get out here, how about this?
Yeah, go ahead.
How about
light bulb?
It becomes more of, why isn't there more hybridization? Okay. Like, why don't, okay. So if you're going to be a running back, fine, but really lean more into what the agents are leaning into. Don't call yourself a running back. You're a weapon. You're an offensive weapon.
You want to be a wide back?
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, for real. I mean, maybe sit there and go, okay, well, what I want to be is I want to be Deebo Samuel. Okay. At his peak, where he's being used most effective. I want to be someone who can be an elite wide receiver and an elite running back at the same time.
But wait a second. But hold on.
That's more of a realistic change.
If I recall correctly, though, and tell me if I might be misremembering this. At one point, that was all fine and dandy a couple of years ago when the Niners were using him like that and he was breaking football. And then when it came time to contract negotiations, he wanted to get traded at one point because they weren't trying to treat him like the weapon that he was and pay him for being a wide receiver and a running back.
Where do you tag him?
Weren't they holding it against him?
If you get a player that is let's say you get a true 50-50 split, it's a player who truly spends half their time at each position. Of course, the team's going to go, no, we got to make sure you play him more at running back because we're going to tag him as a running back. We're not going to tag him as a wide receiver. It's cheaper to tag him.
But what's funny? What's the other position that happened? What you're saying, it was either for All Pro, Pro Bowl, or either the franchise tag. Was it defensive end outside linebacker? Where one of where guys want to be category was that the position that
Jimmy Graham happened to Jimmy Graham
because of that tag? Jimmy Graham, yes.
Yeah, Jimmy Graham,
wide receiver.
Khalil Mack. It was like, okay, well, is he? Do you tag him as a defensive end or you tag him as an outside linebacker? Yeah, I mean, it's of course, but honestly, if we're really looking for solutions, just get rid of the tag. Like if you're players, you just go, let's just get rid of the tag.
It's the tag.
All we gotta do is just let's take away control. We got a new union head. And let's get rid of the tag. Let's no longer have first round contracts that have a 5th-year option. So it's a straight 4-year deal. If that and truth be told, that would be really what solves this, quote unquote, solves this for running backs.
All problems
is
across the board.
All
solve every problem.
Take away the 5th-year option and take away the franchise tag. We will no longer have this discussion. The free market will reign, and it will allow running backs to get to free agency or put teams in a position where they got to pay them when the running backs are like 25, 26. Much different situation if you take away that control.
Restricting movement. You got the draft, which I love, but to Charles McDonald's point, you got the draft. You can't have the draft and the franchise tag. It's just way too much control, which means it'll never happen. I was going to say maybe Saquon Barkley had the best commentary of all with a simple 5-word tweet about the situation. It is what it is. that might be the moral of the story. Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.